On the planet of Arbor, in the segmentum Ultima, the Imperium was ready to fight a desperate war against the planetary governor and what was assumed to be a rogue separatist group. The conflict began when the planet failed to send in their military tithes, when ambassadors to the Administratum failed to respond to astropathic messages about the issue. The Imperium sent in the Imperial Guard. Knowing that the Planetary Defense Force would put up some resistance, the Imperium expected a few skirmishes once they attempted to capture the key hive cities of the planet. Little did they know that the planetary governor had been fortifying the hive cities for the past couple years. Each hive city was enclosed in an indestructible cocoon-like structure, nothing that even the Adeptus Mechanicus had ever seen. When bombing runs on the large structure proved ineffective, guardsmen were sent in to find a kink along the outer border of the structure. The regiments were surprised to find no resistance from the inhabitants, not a single glimpse of movement outside of the hive cities. Many of the sergeants were expecting ambush attacks, and their men were ordered to be on high alert for any sudden surprise attack. Throughout the entire process, guardsmen were on edge, waiting for the sound of gunfire to erupt at any moment, but there was complete silence. Then suddenly, to the surprise relief of everyone, the sound of gunfire. Units mobilized and sped towards the conflict. Vox communication went wild with inquiries of the situation. But just as quickly as the sound was heard, the commotion stopped. It was a case of friendly fire, as one unit mistook another for the enemy. An enemy that seemed nowhere to be found. As the first day came to a close, the night sky was lit up with flashes as the demolition teams detonated their charges along the edge of the structure, where the gates to the hive city used to be. Guardsmen watched the impressive show as they settled into this extremely strange situation. They were trained to be prepared for the initial assault as the most bloody, but this was the exact opposite. Everyone felt that the enemy was watching and waiting for the right moment to attack. All they could do is sink in deeper into what seemed like a trap. Captains began to speculate about the situation. One claimed that the Eldar were the culprits behind this whole thing. He shared his story on the moon of Tamner, when an Eldar pirate ship disabled their space station. The Xeno scum watched as the entire crew hopelessly starved to death. Not a single shot was fired. They simply watched as one by one they died. Another captain pointed towards the ground. He explained he had heard of whole planets covered in underground cities. This could be one of them. The Separatists were counting on them to focus on the giant structures, only to come from underneath and kill them all. As the speculation continued, orders came to set up camp miles away from the hive city. Each regiment was to bombard the structure with artillery fire every hour on the hour until the shell cracked. After a 5-day barrage campaign, the Imperium called down the Adeptus Mechanicus to use their arcane sorcery to scan the massive structure. Something this strong would be of extreme value to the Imperium, and only the tech priests would be able to validate such a discovery. Miraculously, the scans taken of the structure picked up sounds coming from within the hive cities, the voices of billions of traders that inhabited the city. Quickly, the commander ordered the voices deciphered. These voices would shed light on the plot that was to unfold. The Adeptus Mechanicus worked on separating all of the gargled voices. The Imperial Guard watched as serval skull after serval skull buzzed around the enormous structure. They couldn't help but feel uneased by the tech priest's unusual appearance, their grotesque augmentations as alien as any spacefaring Xenos. After a while, the commander was called to the tech priest's tent, where the deciphering process was about to be complete. As the commander entered, he heard the voice.
Pomos nam, pomos nam.
He stood over the tech priest as the voice continued on a loop. The commander could not understand. This was not a tongue he was familiar with. The tech priest explained that no one knew what language this was. It wasn't even a deviation from Low Gothic like most planets tend to create. His team was running the voice through the Imperial language catalogs. The commander asks if that's why the voice was running in a loop. The tech priest shook his head. They weren't looping the voice. The person was simply repeating the same thing over and over again.
Pomos nam, pomos nam.
As everyone in the tent stood listening to the eerie voice, a cogitator began to buzz, and the tech priest was able to pull up another voice.
Pomos nam, pomos nam.
The same thing repeated over and over. The tech priest ordered his men to search through the garbled voices and find every time the phrase pomos nam was used. Within seconds, the cognitators began to ring with hundreds of hits. The commander asked if people inside the city were chanting the same phrase. The tech priest didn't believe so. If they were, there would be a rhythm to the massive jumble of voices, but there wasn't.
Pomos nam, pomos nam.
The tech priest ordered the scans to stop on the city. They were to visit another structure. Perhaps things would get clearer if they gathered more data. The commander could do nothing more than to continue his attempted siege of the city. Eventually, the tech priest was able to decipher one more phrase.
Nisi nos.
And much like the first, it was repeated over and over in an unidentified language. Days turned into weeks and no progress of any kind. The commander began prepping his request for an orbital bombardment on the planet. Suddenly, a crack appeared down the side of one of the structures. The Imperial Guard rushed into action and bombarded the Legion with every warhead at their disposal. Like a giant eggshell, the structure began to crumble and fall. The smoke and debris sent up a giant cloud in the air. When the smoke cleared, the guardsmen were confronted by a gruesome image. An enormous conglomeration of flesh, hair, and bone, covering what used to be the hive city, like a giant fleshy mold growing and pulsating on a mountain of metal. With no barrier to cover the city, the sound captured by the scanners could now be heard by everyone, the cries of millions of people as they moaned in agony. Millions of naked humans being conjoined at various points to one another, some lifeless, others looking out towards the guardsmen in distress. A mucous membrane running through the entire mass like an acidic glue, fusing the bodies together, some of them women and children. Every guardsman stood in shock, unable to process the atrocity they saw before them. To everyone's horror, the blob began to move. What appeared to be two massive shoulders slowly gave rise to a humanoid head. The head turned its grotesque visage towards the guardsmen. The human bodies that made up the demon's skin squirmed as each movement brought them pain. With a hellish grin, the demon began to move towards the men. Fire rang out as ballistic missiles were launched towards the beast. The missiles that made their target left enormous holes in the monster. The creature's insides were also made up of human bodies. With every blast, hundreds of former city dwellers died, but their lives meant nothing to the guardsmen who only saw this demonic creature. The demon pulled his head back and then spit out a giant ball of mucus. As soon as the slime made contact with the guardsmen, it began to steam as it melted through flak armor and metal. Giant acid-spitting demons made up of living human bodies. They were all reported over the Vox communicators as the commander realized that all the hive cities on the planet were birthing these same demons. A total of 6 structures all cracked open and outpoured these behemoths from hell. Years earlier, the planetary governor had made a deal with a rogue psyker. In exchange for the psyker's freedom, he would gift the planetary governor 6 powerful elixirs, one for each one of his hive cities. These elixirs would allow the drinker to live 1,000,000 lives. Unbeknownst to the planetary governor, the psyker was possessed by a demon of Nurgle, and believing the elixirs would grant immortality to him and his family, the governor accepted. The psyker taught the governor how to create a sacred paper-thin cloth that was to be used to build giant canopies over each hive city. The demon instructed the governor that once the canopies were complete and the hive cities shielded from all light, each family member was to consume the elixir at a separate hive city. Upon consumption, the royal family fell over in pain as their skins began to peel. Horribly disfigured, the royal family members were sequestered in their rooms, afraid to show their disfigured skin. Servants began to report that the royal family began to secrete steam. Every time their chamber door was open, steam would roll out into the palaces. Soon each palace and each hive city was filled with a smog that was so thick servants could not see 5 feet in front of them. Embarrassed and ashamed, the planetary governor remained hidden in his palace. Eventually the steam began to roll out even further and get captured by the giant canopies that covered each city. Within 2 weeks, the hive cities were enveloped inside giant steam chambers. During this time, each individual who drank from the elixir began to hear voices. The voices told them they were dying and that the only way to live was to take the lives of their servants. These voices were Nurgle himself, and it was only a matter of time before every family member succumbed to Grandfather Nurgle's embrace. When the citizens began to attempt to pull down the canopy to release some of the steam, they realized it would not tear. Try as they might, the canopy was indestructible, and it soon began to harden. Communication from city to city became impossible, and astropathic signals never returned. Within a month, hysteria began to sink into the populace of each city. The population felt trapped in a giant steam-filled nightmare. An imperial noble gathered a small force of men to storm the governor's palace and take justice for their predicament. But what they found inside the palace horrified them. After breaking down the palace gates, the group was attacked by an abomination. It was the governor, who had fused himself with all of the servants inside his palace and was now controlling them like some sort of exoskeleton. It seemed that whenever the exoskeleton would make contact with any flesh, it would absorb it, sticking to the major body. Using the steam as his cover, the governor added human after human to his growing body. While each individual captured remained conscious and retained their senses, the captured were devoid of all voluntary movement. They were puppets to the royal family. What the Imperial Guard was fighting was the entire population of each hive city, controlled by the individual whom drank from the elixir. Battle against these creatures continued. Communication from the 129th Regiment ceased, and soon the 34th Regiment reported a second demon rushing their flanks. Within minutes, the 34th and the 129th were completely gone. Realizing that these demons were going to overrun his army, the commander ordered a full retreat into the transportation vehicles. As soon as he would make it back to his ship, the order to blow up the planet to hell would be made. The few ships ready to depart did so without hesitation. Unfortunately, they were struck out of the air by the demon's swinging arms. Escape from the planet would be almost impossible. Watching the transport ships crash down in a giant cloud of smoke, the tech priests in charge of deciphering the voices entered in a series of extreme evasive protocols into the minds of his drivers and launched into the air. The escaping tech priest was able to evade the swinging arms of the demon, but the demon leapt up into the air and caught the ship with its hands. The bodies scraped up against the ship door and tore one open. The bodies screamed as they shifted to fit inside the ship's corridors. A few servitors were caught and fused with the rolling mass of screaming human bodies as they pushed their way into the ship. The servitors turned on the crew and began to attack, now under the control of the demon. The tech priest ordered his pilots to ignite the thruster rockets to break free from the demon's grasp. Upon ignition, the demon's arms were sliced and the ship flew away. The remains of his body continued to fight on in the ship as more and more of the crew was captured by the demon. The tech priest realized that the demon was still a threat as it consumed more and more of his crew. He sealed the cockpit doors and ordered all other doors in the ship opened. He was going to expose the demon to the harshness of space. Once the transport ship exited the planet's atmosphere, the demon slowed down and its body stopped screaming as the individual bodies froze. On the planet, the demon that was chasing the tech priest and whose arms were severed suddenly crashed down. It now appeared to be a gigantic mass of human remains stretched around what was once the Imperial Guard base. It seemed that whoever was controlling the demon was now dead, and along with his death, the control over the citizens was gone. A pile of human carcasses, covered in mucus, some still alive, was left for the retreating Imperial Guardsmen to witness. The poor souls would find the Emperor's mercy soon enough, as the commander's transport ship made it back to the fleet. The remaining 5 demons were obliterated by the orbital bombardment. The survivors were forever scarred by the grotesque experience, but they felt lucky to be alive. The bodies left frozen on the tech priest transport ship were taken in by the Inquisition for examination. They found that the body of the governor, who was controlling the giant mass, was never found. The planet was quarantined and then simply wiped off Imperial maps and records. No one was to speak of the incident. The tech priest and commander were both turned away and disciplined for inquiring about the remains of the hard-shell structure left on the planet. The whole campaign would soon become a myth. And that was the creepypasta, Cacoon. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to share it with your friends. Every day until Halloween, we will be trying to post a creepypasta / scary story / grotesque story every day until Halloween, set in the Warhammer 40K universe. We want to do that because, tis the season, and Warhammer 40K is perfect for scary stories and just learning about ghosts, vampires, demons, chaos in general. It's always fun to explore that side of Warhammer 40K. We're not going to stop posting lore videos. We're definitely going to continue doing the 40 facts videos. You'll just be getting these on top of whatever was scheduled that day, whether it's a For the Greater Wall episode or whether it's a 40 facts video. This specific story I actually wrote about a year ago. Reading it now, I would rework the entire thing. I wrote it when I wrote it when my understanding of Nurgle was a little different. My understanding of chaos was different. There's a lot of things now that I see that, that's not really Nurgle. That's just me trying to take an idea and then put it into the Warhammer 40K universe. I would rework it. I think what happened was I had just rewatched the movie Akira, and the whole scene where Tetsuo mutates into that giant creature. I thought it would be really badass to create a creature like that actually turns into, or is made up of thousands of human corpses, and then they're all moving and talking while the creature is moving, or while the creature is attacking. You see the faces and the people crying and squirming and stuff like that. But yeah, the execution wasn't all that, or the writing wasn't all that great. But hopefully I'll improve. If you guys have any other suggestions for other stories, any ideas, just comment down below. Yeah. Make sure to comment down in the comment section below if you guys like these types of videos, because we can continue to put them out even past Halloween, if you guys enjoy them. So hitting the like button and commenting, just letting us know that yes, you want more content like this, will help out the channel, and it'll let us know to continue. But with that said, guys, I'll talk to you tomorrow. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate signing out.
Always used to put my freedom first in any situation.